What's up, everyone? This is some more Heart Gold stuff, at least until the black and white metagame cools down a little bit. Anyway, back to standard OU. This was a really close match, actually, that I had. He leads with a Gliscor, I go with Skarmory. He's probably going to use Taunt, either that or Stealth Rock, but I don't really want to risk the possible Taunt, so I'm going to go to Flygon to take that and U-turn out. Now, Flygon can't really do anything to Gliscor, and I'm really going to go to Gengar, but if I went to Gengar directly, then I wouldn't be able to get my subs up because he would have used Taunt on the switch. So I'm getting in Gengar, and it's a really good Gliscor switch in because the standard Gliscor set really can't do anything to Gengar. So I'm just going to go straight for the substitute and scout his switch in. He sends in a Metagross, which isn't that great of a Gengar switch in, so I'm going to Pain Split it just to get a little bit of damage. I guess I could have gone for Shadow Ball, but I really didn't want to because I already had a sub up, so I didn't want to take any more damage after that. So now I'm going to go into Skarmory because it does a pretty good job of walling Metagross. He sets up in Agility now, which normally would be really problematic, but Skarmory does do a pretty good job of taking down Metagross. Or not taking it down, but, countering it. And I'm actually going to set up one layer of spikes. Thunder Punch did a little bit more than I expected because it had a Life Orb. And I stayed in case he was predicting me to go to Flygon. So I just get a free Roost up. He just missed out on the KO because he ended up over-predicting. So I'm going to be able to Roost off the extra damage. And now, of course, he's going to go for a Thunder Punch because he doesn't want to risk me staying in again. And I somehow survived with 1 HP this time. It was pretty lucky on my part. Don't know what the damage roll on that is because I didn't do the calculators. So now I'm going to go into Flygon because for sure he's going to keep Thunder Punching after that Meteor Mash over-predict there. So I'm going to U-turn out. The fact that he switched out at that point tells me that it's a Adamant Metagross and not Jolly, because the Jolly version actually outspeeds Scar Flygon. So unless he was really paranoid about missing with Meteor Mash or anything like that, or he doesn't have Ice Punch, then that means that he was definitely Adamant. So I'm going to switch in Skarmory on the Gengar, because Gengar is going to be pretty problematic, and I don't really want to deal with it. So I get the Roost off, and then Whirlwind his Infernape switch in. And now he sends in a Staraptor, which was a pretty weird choice in OU. But it is a BL Pokemon, and pretty much all of the BLs are actually viable in OU. Most of them are actually pretty good because they're so unexpected. And I know he has Close Combat in Brave Bird, which was a pretty good attacking combination. So I'm just going to set up a free layer of spikes on him. And he sends in Infernape again, but I think I've got a couple layers of spikes. And I'm going to Roost on the switch. I'm not sure if I was predicting that or I was just planning to fodder Skarmory and just clicked Roost anyway, but it turned out pretty good for me anyway. So since I'm putting him under pressure, I'm expecting that he would go for the Fire attack to get rid of Skarmory, but he actually makes a good prediction and goes for Close Combat, thinking that I'm going to switch. So even though I'm running a max HP Suicune, that is a lot of damage. I'm not actually using Crocune though. This is a sub-CM Suicune with max HP. The 404 HP allows me to set up subs against Blissey, which is useful. And I just went to Skarmory again. I'm not really sure why. I think I was going to go to Gengar, but I was kind of afraid that he would over-predict and go for the Fire attack that time. So I pretty much wanted to sacrifice Skarmory, because I've set up my layers, so I don't really need it anymore. He goes for the Thunderbolt, but it wasn't a Life Orb Gengar, so I ended up surviving since I'm running a specially defensive spread, and I got off that Whirlwind, which is going to do a little bit more damage to him. So at this point, he sends in the Suicune, and I'm just going to keep in Skarmory, because I really thought he was going to finish me off. And I get off that free Whirlwind because he actually Calm Minds again. So Skarmory has been really racking up the entry hazard damage, although I'm going to switch out now because I think that I might be able to save it for fodder later. And he goes for a Shadow Ball, ends up over-predicting again as I go to Heatran, and that's really good for me because now that he doesn't have Life Orb, I've realized that it's probably a Scarf Gengar, which means he's locked into Shadow Ball, and I'm going to be able to set up Stealth Rock for free. I used to have Stealth Rock on Skarmory also, but I eventually split it up and put it onto Heatran, so Skarmory wouldn't be under so much pressure to set up entry hazards. So now that it only has to deal with spikes, it has a lot easier of a job. So I'm going to go into Gengar again. He does get the taunt this time, but it's alright because I still get off a Shadow Ball on him. And I don't think this is quite going to KO, even though I thought it was. I don't really remember the damage percentages, but it does a lot of damage, considering its Stab and Life Orb, and Gliscor has a pretty low special defense stat anyway. He tries to roost it off, but it doesn't really matter because I would have 2-hit KO'd him anyway. Even without the special defense drop, I'm pretty sure that would have KO'd him. So I think I just went for the Shadow Ball again. I actually forgot that he had the Staraptor, and I guess I could have went for the Focus Blast if I wanted to predict that. So that's going to be pretty problematic. I don't want to risk the Focus Blast, and I'm just going to switch in Skarmory to fodder it and regain my offensive momentum. I'm going to have to be pretty careful around Staraptor because it's reasonably fast and it has really good type coverage with close combat and possibly return, I think. So I just go into Flygon, and I do carry Stone Edge on this Flygon because Suicune already takes care of Gyarados, so I don't need to run Thunder Punch. And that's pretty useful here because I get to check his Staraptor and take it out pretty easily. And then he switches to Metagross, and I forgot about that too because, I mean, that was at the beginning of the game, and now that I don't have Skarmory, it's going to be quite a bit more difficult to take care of. So he sets up the Agility. As shown before, it's an Agilagross, so it's going to be pretty problematic, although I do have Flygon to check it in case things get bad. I didn't really want to risk the chance of overpredicting, so I just kept in Suicune. It was at pretty low health anyway, so now I'm going to go into Flygon, and I'm not really sure if he's going to switch out or not, so I just went for the U-turn. I wasn't sure if this was going to KO actually, but it misses out on it, although he does have Life Orb, so I'm going to go to Heatran on what I think is going to be a Meteor Mash. So I can't really do anything to him since he outspeeds me, but my plan was just to get that extra Life Orb recoil to finish him off. And he does get that Meteor Mash crit, which was kind of annoying because Heatran resists Meteor Mash really nicely, and I could have used that extra HP, probably. And now he goes into Suicune. He takes the entry hazard damage, which is really slowing him down at this point. I actually stay in predicting a possible Calm Mind, but he sets up Sub instead, which is even better actually, so I get to Roar him out. I added in Roar on Heatran to abuse my entry hazards, Stealth Rock and Spikes, so it really helps to rack up extra damage, residual damage, over the course of the match. So now he goes into Gliscor. I'm going to Protect to see what he does. And he actually uses Roost instead of Earthquake, so I pretty much wasted my Protect for nothing. I could have even got off a free Lava Plume, which would have done a good amount of damage and possibly have burned him even. So I'm going to switch to Gengar now as he taunts. I'm not really sure why he taunted actually. Maybe he knew that I was going to switch out, but even then he must have known that I had Gengar, so I'm not really sure why the taunt was the best move in this case. And he's going to try to Roost it off, but it really doesn't make a difference because I think I'm pretty much going to be able to KO him over the long run because Shadow Ball does a little more than 50% and Roost only recovers half of his damage anyway. So I'm just going to stay in and keep using Shadow Ball, and it is KOing him over the long run. He goes for one more Roost. I should be able to take him out next turn with one more Shadow Ball because he's at just a little bit more than half health now. So there's no way he'll be able to survive that. And now he goes into Suicune. I guess he just wanted to fodder it, although it probably doesn't help him that much considering he still has Gliscor later. So I'm going to be able to KO him anyway. And of course Suicune is at really low health, and Gengar's Shadow Ball does a lot of damage, so it's more than powerful enough to take him out at this point. He goes into his Infernape now, and I'm not really sure why I switched out, but I went to Flygon at this point, and he uses Overheat, misses, and he uses Mach Punch just to get some extra damage on me as I U-turn out. I don't know if I was just paranoid about him being a Scarf Infernape, although I think I must have figured out earlier that it wasn't. So I'm caught in a pretty awkward position here because I actually did not KO with U-turn, but he does have Life Orb, and I know that I can survive the close combat with barely any health, but I still survive it. So I'm actually not going to use an attack. I'm just going to take the opportunity to set up a Dragon Dance as the Life Orb recoil finishes him off. And now, the main thing is he has Scarf Gengar, which is going to be really annoying throughout this match. It's a pretty unusual set on PO, Pokemon Online, but I forgot that it's actually kind of popular on Wi-Fi, so I should have paid more attention to that. And this switch-in actually is going to lose the game for me. He locked himself into Thunderbolt, and I actually should have switched in Flygon in this case, and that might have led to me winning the match actually. So he gets a crit with Thunderbolt, and I use Lava Plume. I actually switched in Heatran because I thought it would make a good switch-in because it's especially defensive Heatran, but he gets the crit, and it doesn't really help me at all. I'm not really sure how things would have gone otherwise, but I think I should have switched to Flygon, as you'll see later. So now I finally go into Flygon, because he's locked himself into Thunderbolt. There's really no point in staying in, and I just clicked Outrage. It turns out that I actually am going to KO his Gliscor with Outrage. I actually wasn't sure. I thought that I might actually miss the KO, even though he's half weakened, and he actually goes into Gengar now to revenge me. So if I went into Flygon first, I could have been able to Outrage him, and he would have been forced to Shadow Ball most likely. Or maybe Focus Blast, which is more risky, so then I would have been able to go to Heatran and revenge him. And my last Pokemon is of course my own Gengar, but since he's locked into Shadow Ball with the Scarf, he has enough speed to KO me and win the game 1-0. Good game.